Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551. Excuse me a second. Oh, yeah. And I am back with a video review. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at the video game. excuse me now. Neo, The World Ends With You, the sequel to the first game, The World Ends With You, that was released back on the Nintendo DS and on mobile devices. For the sequel, though, this one's for being released on the Nintendo Switch. It's also available on the PS4 and PC via Steam, but we'll be focusing on the Switch version. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage of me playing the game, though, I'll have a link down in the description down below, or you can click on the card that will appear up on this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And for parents out there, it's worth pointing out that Neo, The World Ends With You is rated T for teens, for ages 13 up by the ESRB, though. During the Nintendo DS era, there were a lot of games that were released on it that were sort of unique in a way. While some games didn't really use the touchscreen or the dual screen properly, there were some games that did very well with it, though. One of those games was The World Ends With You. Now, this was a game that was, I believe, developed by some of the folks who worked on the Kingdom Hearts series, and you could definitely tell that certainly some of the designs are, excuse me, from folks who worked on the original Kingdom Hearts. It was basically a unique idea. It used both screens. The top screen had you controlling your partner and all, using certain button commands, while the bottom screen had you controlling the main character, which I believe the name was Niku, with basically with the stylus, and you use different pins to basically attack or move your character around. It was an interesting concept, especially for a system like the Nintendo DS, and it sort of gained a following when the game came out, though. The game would also see a release on other systems, such as ISO devices, though, and would also see a release on the Nintendo Switch. Unfortunately, the Switch version, to me, based on my time with it, though, was not a great version. I mean, trying to play the game was like borderline unplayable, especially if you're trying to play it on the TV, basically using one of the Joy-Cons to try to control your character. In other words, it tried to recreate the experience you had on the DS or with a touchscreen, which unfortunately did not work as well. Maybe it probably worked better if you're just using the Nintendo Switch through, like, you know, in the portable mode, or if you're playing it through Switch Lite. But as far as playing it on the TV, not as much, though, and it certainly became a negative experience for me, to the point that I was worried that there's odds are we probably were not going to get a sequel or anything like that. Flash forward to this year, though, and much to my surprise, I learned that Square Enix was actually developing a sequel to The World Ends With You, though, and that certainly put a smile on my face, because I didn't expect that they would bring back that title or anything like that. But they did, and after spending some time with it, I would have to say, though, that excuse me, the Neo, The World Ends With You is an enjoyable niche title, especially for those who are fans of the first game and all. So why don't we get started with the pros and cons, and we'll start off first with the pro side. And I do want to say, from the style and look and the visuals, though, I definitely like how the game basically aims for something that feels more like, you know, the Jet Set Radio or the Jet Grind Radio style to it, though. I definitely like the cel-shaded look to the game, though, but it definitely feels like this whole style of it feels something ripped out of, like, Jet Set Radio, and that certainly isn't a bad thing. Like The World Ends With You, Jet Set Radio is certainly also a hidden gem for those who basically play the game. So excuse me, that was definitely one of the highlights was its art style, and definitely the Neo, The World Ends With You maintains that style from the first game, but this time in a more fully, in somewhat in a 3D environment, and it doesn't look that bad, especially on the Nintendo Switch and all. The next thing I do want to talk about is the combat and the gameplay, and the gameplay and the combat is surprisingly fun and enjoyable, though. Basically, when you basically get access to what are these pins, and each pin has special uniques and power. So some pins may require you to do rapid tapping the game, or tap the button, though. Others may require you to charge it, hold on to it, and then release it, though. And some pins will have basically the ability to either have different elements like fire, ice, lightning. Some may even heal your party and all. But basically, you use these pins when you go into battle, which is against basically the noise though. When you go into battle though, when you assign a pin though, each of the pins are assigned to a certain button. So if you hit one button though, you'll activate that pin. You hit the other one, you'll activate that pin. They're usually assigned to like Y, X, and A, and the R button, though, with B being mostly the dodge and all. And throughout the battle, though, the camera is locked on, but you can move on to attack other characters, though. When you go further into combat, you basically and do enough damage to an enemy, you'll basically see some sort of cooldown, which is basically your groove meter, though. If you hit that enemy with a different pin, though, your groove meter goes up, and when it reaches 100%, you can perform basically a special move that does damage for the enemies in the battle and all. So it's a really neat idea in terms of the combat part, though. Gameplay, though, it's basically an RPG, though, and there are certain things that it still maintains some of the stuff with RPGs, ranging from some of the side quests in the games to even some unique stuff, such as doing some of the puzzles that they have in the game, like basically typing in the right number in a phone booth, to basically even unique features such as being able to rewind time to basically complete a certain task and all. So it's enjoyable. The combat to me is enjoyable. The gameplay is fun though, so it's definitely one of the highlights with Neo, The World Ends With You. And last but not least though, it's terms of basically the Switch version goes. The Switch version runs perfectly fine, at least based on my time with it. Obviously, it's going to run at 30 frames per second, though. There have been some people that have reported dips or anything like that, but I really haven't seen anything on the level that would make the game virtually unplayable or anything like that, though. So I didn't experience it. That might be different for other folks out there, but for the most part, the game runs well on the Nintendo Switch. It's at 30 frames per second. Obviously, it's not going to look good as compared to if you're playing it on the PS4, or if you have the PS4 version and playing on the PS5, or on PC for that matter. But for me, it runs well on the Nintendo Switch. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, which are the cons. So we'll take a little break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of Neo, The World Ends With You for the Nintendo Switch. As I mentioned before, the game's also available on the PS4 and PC via Steam. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And we'll start off with the first con. Now, as I mentioned before, the game has basically, at least in the combat and gameplay part, the gameplay has a lock-on where basically you could basically move if you want to target any of the different noises or enemies in the game. That's because the game basically uses a fixed camera, both in the combat side and both in the exploration side of it, though. And this isn't necessarily bad, but it can be a little bit annoying sometimes. There are times when trying to maneuver around in the exploration side can be difficult because you're not knowing if you're going in the right direction or not. And it can also be a little bit difficult in combat sometimes because there may be you're trying to time or hit a certain enemy, but because the camera's at a certain angle, or trying to dodge an enemy, though. Does this make the game unplayable by any chance? The answer is no. It doesn't make the game in any way unplayable. In fact, I've played games with fixed cameras before, whether it's games like Devil May Cry, the original one, or the original God of War. Those games have used fixed cameras, and they're still enjoyable and all that stuff. So it's the same thing with Neo, The World Ends With You, though. It doesn't make the game unplayable, but there are times when it can be a little bit annoying every now and then in regards of the fixed camera. And last but not least, I do want to talk about is the pins in the game. And some of these pins are kind of a little bit of a hit and miss. While there are some pins in the game that are effective, though, especially ones with different elements, though, there are times when some of the pins seem a little bit useless at some moments. Some of it may have to do with different types. Like, for example, I have no problem with the ones that have the rapid, you know, hitting the buttons and hitting the buttons on the Switch controller or anything like that. But some of the ones like the charging one, like you have to hold down the button to charge and then release it though, those can be a little bit tricky at times, especially if you have an enemy that's moving around a lot on the screen though. But if you hit the enemy with the charge one, it could do a lot of damage, but it's very tricky with that one. Other times though, you do get basically pins after combat though, and some of these just become a little bit useless, especially when you have sort of a more powerful one, although you can sell your pins at different stores and all that, so that certainly isn't necessarily a bad thing. But like I said, some of the pins in the game I found can be sort of a hit and miss though, but a lot of that will depend on what your preference and what your taste is. Also, one last thing to point out in regards to pins, while you can attach pins to your characters and all, some pins you won't be able to, not every pin will be available for every character. Some characters are only confined to certain pins, like one character may only be allowed to use the charge pin while another character may not, and that might be annoying to some folks who would prefer using a certain type of pin or something like that. So for me, the pins can be sort of a hit and miss though. Overall though, Neo: The World Ends With You for the Nintendo Switch is a very respectful sequel and definitely a niche title, definitely an enjoyable niche title, especially for those who are fans of the original World Ends With You. At its best though, the art style of the game looks great. It definitely has that Jet Set Radio or Jet Grind vibe to it though. The combat is enjoyable with fun, and definitely, I will say, much better than The World Ends With You, mostly or should I say more better than the World Ends With You Final Remix on the Nintendo Switch. And the game basically definitely runs well on the Nintendo Switch, even though it may not be on the same, it may not be for everyone in terms of how it looks on the PS4 or PC via Steam, but I certainly didn't have problems with the Switch version though. At its worst, however, the fixed camera is going to be, for some people, annoying though, and some of the pins are, like I said, some are good, some are bad, some can be sort of a hit and miss. There are some that people are going to like and some people that are going to hate. But otherwise, though, I'm having a fun time with the game. I'm glad that Square Enix was able to do a sequel to The World Ends With You, though. I do hope it does well enough, though, that maybe it convinces them to maybe dig through some of their old IPs and maybe revise them. I mean, we've seen games like this and Archerizer, if I'm saying the name correctly, get a revisal. Maybe something like, say, Brave Man Fusaki, if I'm saying the name correctly, though, to even maybe Parasite Eve getting another shot, though. I mean, would be nice if they could revive those, though. But in either way, though, I think Neo: The World Ends With You is a fun niche title, especially fans of the first one will definitely enjoy it, though. As far as which version to pick up, again, some of this will depend on what your system of choice is. It isn't really a demanding game or anything like that, so I'm okay with playing it on the Nintendo Switch. But if the PS4 or PS5 or PC is your main system of choice, though, then go with those if you prefer those. But either way, fans of the first one will definitely probably enjoy Neo: The World Ends With You. And here's a hoping that Square Enix continues the series, and I wouldn't mind a third entry in the World's End With You game series, though. Okay, this concludes my video review of Neo: The World Ends With You for the Nintendo Switch. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Neo: The World Ends With You? Are you glad that Square Enix did a sequel to this game, though? Have you picked it up? And if so, which version are you going to pick up? Either the Switch, PS4, or PC via Steam, though? Do you think that this could open the door to the possibility of maybe Square Enix reviving maybe some other IPs like Parasite Eve that should probably get another chance or anything like that? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!